Eric Metaxas is a best-selling New York Times author. He's written, I think, at least 6 major books and over 30 children's books. He's the host of a nationally syndicated radio talk show program, and we're just delighted to have him. His most recent book, If You Can Keep It, is a New York Times #1 bestseller. So please welcome to Christian Home Educators of Colorado Homeschool Day at the Capitol, Eric Metaxas. Eric, welcome.
Thank you. Now, the name is Metaxas. I love Texas. I want to be very clear, but I live in New York, so it's Metaxas. Listen, everywhere I go, I meet homeschoolers and their parents, and in a few minutes or seconds, I realize these kids are going to take over the world by the grace of God. I'm stunned at the level of education and understanding that I see. And the sad part is it's so dramatic because kids that are not homeschooled tend to be the opposite. They're not understanding some basic things. So I am a huge fan of the homeschool movement. Every time I talk to homeschoolers and their parents, I just realize this is the future of the country. These are folks who understand it. And, you know, I have to confess, I didn't understand the link between faith and freedom even 10 years ago. It was something that I had an idea that they're connected, but I didn't understand how exactly they were connected, because most of us who grew up, you know, since the 60s or so, we didn't get this. If we went to public schools or whatever, they just weren't really downloading what is necessary to be an American, to keep the republic, in the words of Benjamin Franklin. And so when I began to understand it, I thought, wow, this is important. And a lot of homeschool kids already understand it, but it's a joy, as I say, to be speaking to your audience.
That's awesome, Eric. And that's a great transition to your book, If You Can Keep It. A lot of homeschoolers know this is a famous quote from Ben Franklin. It just happened to be written down in a journal. And I've kind of previewed your book a little bit, and wow, what an amazing topic. Tell us about the book. Tell us about your passion behind it. Maybe just give us a few minutes on why you wrote the book, why it's important, and why people need to hear about this.
Well, I knew that I was beginning to figure some things out. About 10 years ago, I began putting some things together, and I thought, young people need to know this. I need to write this, put it in a book, Letters to a Young American or something, because I know that most people don't understand this, and this is fundamental. It couldn't be more fundamental. This is not complicated. Anybody can understand this. Everyone used to understand this. But the basic idea, there's a chapter in my book, If You Can Keep It. Well, let's just start there. The title comes from Benjamin Franklin. Some people know this, but many don't. He was leaving the Constitutional Convention. And these are things that even I had forgotten, that we had won the war by 1783. And for 4 years, we had the Articles of Confederation. We really weren't doing what we had hoped to do. We hadn't really figured out how is self-government going to work. And we get to a point where the Articles of Confederation, we start thinking like the federal government is too weak. Imagine that, okay? The states are strong, but the federal government is weak. We need to figure this out. So we go back to the drawing board and we have the Constitutional Convention. And when it was over, many people were wondering, were they able to pull this off? Freedom on this scale has never happened in the history of the world, never. Why would we think we'd be able to pull it off? I think it's miraculous. I don't use that word lightly. I wrote a book about miracles. I think we have to understand that it's not supposed to work, but if God helps us, it's possible. So Benjamin Franklin is leaving the Constitutional Convention, and a woman, Mrs. Powell of Philadelphia, says, Dr. Franklin, what have you given us, a monarchy or a republic? She was actually wondering, is it possible to have a republic? Is this some pie in the sky idea? It's never been done before. And in England, we have a monarchy and we've got a parliament. Maybe that's what they came up with. So Franklin says to her, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. In other words, we've come up with this constitution with the idea of a republic, but you, the people, we, the people, have to keep the republic. And that's when it hit me, Jim. I was just kind of astonished that I didn't really understand this before. You know, here I am in my 40s, suddenly getting what was sort of there, but it never really clicked, that we, the people, we are the government, we have to keep the republic. It takes something. It's not nothing. If you want to be governed from without, you want to be governed by a tyrant, you want to be governed by a bureaucracy, a big state, then you don't have to do much. Stay out of trouble, don't commit any crimes, pay your taxes, and shut up. If you want freedom, there's some things you need to do. And there are things that each of us needs to understand. And so in writing the book, I wanted to set up this idea that we have to keep the republic. If we, the citizens, don't keep the republic, it doesn't keep itself, and it will be taken over by big government, big state. We see that happening in spades, crazy right now. And I think it's good for us to see the horror of socialism, the horror of creeping big statism, where they say, just mind your own business, we'll take care of it. Well, that's not freedom. So the way that we do it, I got it from my friend Os Guinness. He came up with this term, the golden triangle of freedom. And this is magnificent. When I remember reading this in his book, and I remember asking him, Oz, have you written more about this? This is a big idea. Do you understand what a big idea? And he says, all the founders knew about this. It's not I didn't invent it. Nonsense. He's being overly humble. Os Guinness came up with the term, the golden triangle of freedom. And yes, the founders understood it, but the term is his. And I'll say it quickly and then I'll explain it. The golden triangle of freedom, which is key to keeping the republic, key to self-government, is the idea that freedom or self-government or liberty requires virtue. Virtue in turn requires faith, and then faith in turn requires freedom. Okay, so what does it mean? Self-government requires us to govern ourselves. In other words, if I want to be free and I don't want someone else to govern me, I want to be free, I have to govern myself. I have to do the right thing without being forced. I don't want to be governed. I want to govern myself. So I'm going to do the right thing without anybody looking. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to do these things. Why? Because there are laws? No, because I am a virtuous person who believes stealing is wrong. I'm a virtuous person who believes paying taxes is the right thing to do. I believe in these things, so I'm going to do it without much pressure because I have virtue. So self-government and freedom requires the citizens to have virtue. But the founders all said virtue requires faith. Now, usually it's Christian faith, but it need not be. In other words, if I could be a pagan who has faith in, I want to do the right thing because I believe in democracy. I don't even know why I'm doing it, but I have faith in a larger order. So I'm willing to subvert my desires for the common good. Now, usually that comes from Christian faith, and it was always obvious to people like Franklin, who was not a theologically orthodox Christian, but he saw his friend George Whitefield preaching and revival breaking out. And wherever revival broke out and people got Jesus, people got faith, what happened? Crime went down, alcoholism went down, domestic abuse went down, the ability to govern people to govern themselves went up. So they saw that where virtue is there, where faith is there, you get virtue, you get self-government, it works. But the key is, if freedom requires virtue and virtue requires faith, faith cannot be coerced. The government can't say, well, you know what? In order for this to work, we need faith, so everybody's going to become a Presbyterian. Everybody's going to become whatever. They can't do that. They say, no, faith has to be free. So faith in turn requires freedom. We need religious liberty. We, the government, cannot decide what faith the people will have, or if they will have any faith. We have to be agnostic on that issue. We have to step back and let the people choose freely. So this is a really tricky thing. You can't guarantee it. It's got to come from the people. So we, the people, have to keep the republic ourselves, in the sense that no one's going to force me to believe in God. No one's going to force me to be virtuous. Once force enters the picture, we cease to have freedom. We cease to be governing ourselves. So it's this magical triangle, the golden, it's in my book if you can keep it, but the idea is that we have to take an active role in explaining how freedom works, in explaining and promoting the idea that virtue and faith go hand in hand with freedom. We cannot coerce it, but we want to encourage it. We want to teach our kids that this is the way freedom works. When people virtuously do what they know to be right because they fear God and they want to please God, and it has nothing to do with the government. That's the beauty of self-government. And so you can have people who are atheists, or you can have those people in the system, but the majority of the citizens have to have virtue and usually will have faith. That's what all the founders understood. And my final point is that all the founders understood this, not just the Christian founders. Every single one of them wrote about this. I have quotes in my book, if you can keep it. It's astounding that they all got this and they passed it on generation by generation. Lincoln understood this magnificently, but in recent decades, we've forgotten it. That's why I wrote the book, because if we do not remember this and teach it and spread the word, freedom goes away, as it is going away right now. So this is rather serious.
Right. So serious. As a mom, I was, like I said, I was a homeschool mom for 26 years. And one of my questions to you is, people get busy in their own, their own agenda, their own passions. And as a homeschool mom, just doing stuff. What do you think as us as homeschoolers, what can we do? Parents, kids, what can we do to help this? What you're saying in your book, the golden triangle. What do you think we as the citizens can do?
Well, since I'm a writer, I get one cop-out answer per interview. And my cop-out answer is read my book if you can keep it. Because I literally, being a writer, the way I communicate is in these books. Now it's a pretty short book. It's easy to read. It's something that young people can get. But I sort of feel like what happens when you read it, when you begin to understand this yourself, you come up with ideas. You begin seeing that this is, for me, I'm supposed to be a part of this. Some people will be a part of it by saying, I want to take kids on field trips to Gettysburg, to the nation's capital, to Mount Rushmore. I want to infuse a love of country in these young kids. And I think that's something all parents should do on one level or another. But some people really get into it and they share videos and things. But we have to teach a love of country. So somehow there are ways we can do it. In my book, I describe a couple things people can do. One thing I say people can do is to memorize Paul Revere's Ride. One of the most beautiful poems ever written, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I memorized it with my daughter when she was, I think, 8. And it's a long poem, but it is so beautiful. And it instills a love of country and the love of an appreciation of the sacrifice of those who died in this noble idea, for this noble cause of liberty. So I say to people, and we had a contest on my radio program, to memorize Paul Revere's Ride. I tell people to watch the film with their family, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, with Jimmy Stewart. It's just beautiful. There are all kinds of things like that we can do, but we have to teach our kids and remind ourselves we have to love our country. We have to celebrate the best of it. Don't denigrate it all the time. Say it's a racist country. That's nonsense. We are all sinners and the country's far from perfect, but we have to celebrate what we've gotten right. And by doing that, we encourage each other to continue to get it right and to get it better and to be better. But we have to celebrate America. We have to celebrate the freedoms that were enshrined in our Constitution. And we can't listen to the voices that say, no, never celebrate, only condemn. That's the voice of the devil. We know that God wants us to repent of any sins for sure. But if we get stuck there, that's really the narrative of the 60s, where we got stuck in the negative and we ceased to celebrate the positive. We have to celebrate independence. We have to celebrate Flag Day on June 14th. There's a passage in my book, If You Can Keep It, where I talk about when I was 9 years old, my 5th grade teacher took us outside to the flagpole to celebrate Flag Day. I will never forget it for the rest of my life. So there's a million things that each of us can do. It's, I want to make a mini series, a TV series based on the book, If You Can Keep It, because I really think that if Americans get this, then we'll keep the republic. But we're really very much in danger of losing it. We're just about losing it. We have to get really serious. So I'm just grateful for your time, because it doesn't get more important as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Eric, I agree with you. And we're celebrating today. This is Homeschool Day at the Capitol. It's been an annual event for Christian home educators of Colorado. And you make a marvelous point in the book that this democratic republic was the first time it had ever been tried. And my goodness, it's created the freest, most prosperous nation the world has ever known.
No doubt about it.
Products of that. And I love how you make that point in the book.
The other thing I forgot to say was that it's because I was raised by parents who didn't grow up in this country. My father comes from Greece. My mother comes from Germany. They revered this country because they came from places that were not like this. And they understood this is an amazing place. And they taught my brother and me to love America. And I remember right after 9/11, I was on a speed ferry going past the Statue of Liberty. And I got choked up because I looked over and I realized those buildings are not there. There's the Statue of Liberty still standing there with her torch, still saying to the people of the world, come here.
You're tired, you're poor.
And let us celebrate freedom. And we want to share our freedom with the rest of the world. We're not here. America's never been about America. America is about an idea that everyone can participate in. You don't need to live here. You don't need to be an American. Everyone can understand these ideas and can bring these ideas to life in their own countries. But we in this country have to keep the flame alive because the rest of the world has been looking to us for encouragement along these lines. And so we have a really noble, vital role on the world stage. And that's why God has blessed this country, because we're a nation for others. And that's always been the case. And we need to understand it.
Well, Eric, I'm getting emotional just listening to you speak.
That's
and
right.
I agree with you. I can't thank you enough for taking a little time and participating in our event today. Appreciate you very much for being here. Thank you, Eric Metaxas, for being with us today.
I appreciate what you guys are doing. God bless you. Keep up the good work.
All right. Amen.
Thanks, Eric.